Yes, from Drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. So today we have our own Paul Bork with us. Let's start our discussion of COVID stats. Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Moving. Here we have, this is the Zoe data for the UK, and you can see this was their prior height. It came down. Notice these are the reported cases, and you notice that, and we'll see some of this later, there's a step as it comes down. It doesn't just come down evenly. And then they've had a second wave, it came down, and then another wave, and then it just keeps building up, and now they're at the highest level that they've ever seen for the incidence of COVID in the U.S. The last day that the Zoe app was out, they're showing a 26% increase in that week, 50% increase the week before. The cases are just going completely out of control. Their R is 1.2, 325,000 new cases, and 1 in 19 people are currently ill in the UK. And this is based on the app where people are just electronically submitting what their condition is and what they're feeling.
So, Paul, is it correct to assume that in Zoe app, the data is coming from new infections, repeat infections, vaccinated and infections, correct? Everyone?
Yes, it's everyone. There's some information, I think I may mention it later. The guy from the Zoe app said that they're seeing about 3 months of protection against reinfection from people who have the Omicron. And in the UK, it's all BA2 variants, not the BA1. The US, the CDC, what little data they're allowing to come out because they're afraid some of us might misinterpret it or whatever, says half the cases they think are now BA2. I don't know whether that's half of the new cases, that's half of the total cases, or what the number is, or if it's half in some states, not, whatever.
Did I hear it correctly that you said 3 weeks for the efficacy?
3 months.
3 months, sorry.
So they're seeing 3 months. And so there are some reinfections of people that get it right away, but the rate seems to be down. And after about 3 months, it comes back up to the level of, the non-waning or whatever, for whether it's a vaccine or an infection. And we're seeing that they're seeing that the infection is more protective than the vaccine, but they're getting about that period of time. So the Omicron apparently can come in very quickly when the immune system is in the less active stage and the numbers come down, the number of active B cells and T cells and all the rest.
So one more question. Are they still testing in the same way, or the number of tests?
No.
Or the...
No, the UK changed all their reporting. They've gone, the number of lateral flow tests is way down. I understand that it's very difficult to get a PCR test. The Zoe app guy said, don't even try, just do the lateral flow. And they're about to require people to pay for it. So he said, go stock up. And when you use them, don't use too many. And but they essentially have decided that the pandemic is over and the government is pulling their support out. So while these cases are going up, we will look at the official cases are they're much lower. But this is from the Zoe app, and during this time frame before it stopped, and even now, the Office of National Statistics data correlates better with the Zoe app data than it does with the official UK data in the recent times.
Very interesting. Thank you very much.
And it shouldn't be that surprising because the Zoe app was calibrated with the Office of National Statistics. So they took a look and said, oh, when we find 3 cases, there's actually 10. And then, they do that for a while and they say, oh my gosh, we're correlating with it. Well, I don't think that's all that surprising because they sort of set it up that way. Okay, now here's the age distribution that Zoe is showing. And here, for the first time, we're seeing all the age groups increasing at the same time. Where before we had, first it was the 18 to 34s. No, it was the 0 to 17s that went up, and then the 18 and 34s and the 35s. but the older people tended to stay down. But now we're seeing all of it coming up, and I think that's because it's becoming an epidemic situation where the infection is running around everywhere. They said that they still believe that the Office of National Statistics said the majority of people are still agreeing to isolate when they're sick, but it's not required to do that legally anymore. It's not legally required to report your test results. And so, again, the official data is going to be much lower just because of the changed rules, even if they are reporting just as diligently as they were before.
Got it.
Scotland, I think, is a little higher than the UK.
Quick comment from Bambi. Free lateral flow tests end 1st April. I've not been able to order any for 10 days. People just won't test anymore unless their work insists. Hospital admissions will be the clue. Agreed.
Right. And so what we need to do, the hospital will test the people coming in. And so we need to do just what I was talking about with the Zoe data, is correlate it. And when we say, okay, 10% of the cases are in the hospital for incidental, it probably, the ratio will be about the same going forward. Okay, and this is the reinfection rate. And I think that Dr. Spector was trying to be alarmist, perhaps. I mean, he lost all his funding from the government, and he's going to continue, which I think means that the government made a good decision fiscally, that if it's still going to provide the same data and they don't have to pay for it, why should the government pay for it? But you can see here he's hidden the 0. This is going between 5 and 7, so 0 really is down here. And so here he's showing the reinfection rate going up and down, and it looks like it varies. And this is a fine graph if you're just trying to see the details of how it goes up and down. But here I've got the graphs, and if this is 7 to 5, that's 2. Then we have another 2 down, and so that goes down to 3. That goes down, and then 1. So actually, the amount that this curve is going up and down should really be followed by this curve. The variation of reinfections is fairly constant.
So let me understand it. So you're saying that the data that is shown in this big graph looks very tumultuous. However, it should be a little better in its.
It should be a lot better, because if where the 5 was actually a 0, all this data would get scrunched up, and the vertical change would only be this amount that you see in this little graph.
So why did they do this?
I think they did it because he's trying to have alarmists and trying to get people excited and seeing things going on. I think it's much more important to see it this way, that the reinfection rate is fairly constant. If we go back and see how much the cases have changed, and the reinfection rate percentage-wise is almost the same, this is showing that the Omicron the reinfection behavior is the same when they had low cases and when they had high cases. And so it's saying that the reinfection is part of I think the immune system of the person infected, and isn't related to how many people are coughing or how much exposure they get to the various the viruses. Because if it were true that more virus exposure would give you a higher reinfection rate, as the cases more than doubled here, we would see that the reinfection rate would more than double. And you can see right here we have, in December was the highest rate that they found, and here we have in March, it's sort of in the middle of it. And so, and this at the beginning was probably, can probably be disregarded because of either reporting or when Omicron was first starting and it was mixed with Delta. And so the rate was probably lower reinfection. So it's probably really going between about 6 and 7. So that's probably within the accuracy of what the app of people calling in can actually report. So I think this is very reassuring data to see when this huge shift, and we have 1 in 20, 1 in 19 currently ill, and we saw the reinfection rate and is essentially between 6 and 7, about 6.5 all the way through.
Got
it. So this is a reinfection in a month. The reinfection in 1 month was rare, is what he said. I don't know what the data was. And 3 months enhanced immunity, and after that it drops off. So I think the 5 to 7% reinfection rate must be over a longer period than 3 months. And so maybe he's looking at a 6-month
Got it.
reinfection rate.
And I
So
want
while
to
we,
just,
go ahead.
sorry, please complete your thought.
No, I was just saying that, so we've heard a lot about reinfection and whatever. This data across the whole country of the UK, and the UK is a little different in terms of the infection and some other things, but I think we can draw comfort that we're going to be about a 6% reinfection rate for people that have it. Some people will get reinfected within a month. Most people will have a couple, 3 months where they won't. And if people are running around and constantly getting exposed, this 3-month period will keep getting reset.
I understand. That's actually good to know. And then I also wanted to take a quick break and welcome Rima. So Rima has been away for some days. So here Rima is. Rima, welcome.
Yes, welcome back, Rima. It's good to have you back with us.
Excellent.
Okay, so that's why I put these little graphs here, is to measure it so you could see if we go down, because it should be 5, and so this data should be just basically up here and down, which is very, very stable. And now we had looked a little bit at the next strain, and I'm going to jump back into that. Here we have the next strain, and this is their rate estimate is 26 substitutions per year, which is the black line that they have here. Since all the new Omicron cases, and Omicron 1 and Omicron 2, BA1 and BA2 are here, they're higher. So this being way out on the end tends to pull this line up more. I think if you ignore the BA1 and BA2, we get the yellow line that's here. And that's 90% of what the other one was. So it's really a 23 substitutions per year rate rather than the 26. And so that's the yellow line. The blue line is simply taking the yellow line at the same slope and moving it up so the center is up here. And so if the rate is occurring the same way that it was with the other strains of Omicron, but something happened to make the base Omicron have more variant, have more substitutions, then it will continue along this line. And there was just something that moved it up. Say in one person, they got a whole bunch, or in a small group, they got a whole bunch of variations for some reason that wasn't continuing. This line could be parallel and just move up and start with more. And so we can't tell, I don't think, from the data here, we don't have a long enough baseline to see if it's going to continue along, but just be shifted up. And so the slope and the number of new variants per unit time could be the same. We simply will have more variants going on, but the new variants, the new substitutions will be at the same rate that they had before. Did I say that in a way that made sense?
It does. It does.
Okay, but that's not the only interpretation we can have.
So there is a question. Augie says, so what's new? We're going to die?
No, it always varies. It just means that there'll be more variation, okay?
Yeah.
The Omicron had the highest variation and the lowest risk. So if it keeps going that way, we want as many substitutions as we can get.
Correct. And to me, it seems like
it's also silly to put this at 0. This is the first one. This is the first one that they sequenced, the Wuhan. That isn't when the virus started. The virus started mutating many years ago. It was there and it mutated, and then we just grabbed it the first time we looked. We said, oh, that's 0. It's not 0. That's 0 of what we know, but it has been mutating all along, and it will continue to mutate. And so we have to be careful that we think of it that saying, oh, it really started here, and all this is the design, and then it's going forward. It's not like someone built this, like a drone, and then suddenly we're making improvements or changes. No, this has been mutating for essentially forever, as far as we know. And so the black line is the line that they've estimated. The yellow line is the line that I've put through discounting the BA1 and BA2. So that's the slope. And then again, if we simply had more mutations and the BA1 and 2 started with something that was more mutated, but the rate was the same, we would follow the blue line. Now, if rather than that, something has fundamentally changed in the Omicron for BA1 and BA2, and their mutating at a faster rate, the question is, where did it start? If it started back here, then we get the red line. And the red line says that it is increasing at 20% higher than it was before, which should give us 32 mutations or substitutions per year. And if it actually broke from this black line at this point, and I'm trying to hit where the center of all these red and orange are, then it would be a 60% increase. And so then the substitutions would be 43 per year.
Got it.
And again,
Thank you very much.
The more substitutions, our experience has been, the more substitutions, the less dangerous the virus gets, but more infectious, so more people get it. And so this will just accelerate whatever is going on there, and it may make the virus better faster than it was before.
Got it. And I wanted to add a comment from Rima here. One of our friends, double vax and booster, tested positive. So thank you very much for adding that. And to the listeners, to the cool beans, are you seeing reinfections? I think I got reinfected as well a couple of weeks ago. So are you seeing that within your family, your friends? What is your experience? My thought is, this is my thought and opinion, that I think the virus is just going to become common cold like virus, would occur again and again, and slowly it would just become more of a seasonal thing. Sorry, back to you,
Okay.
Paul.
So I want to share something else with folks. This here, this is a live next strain. So if I put this here, this next strain, you can see this one is the global subsampling, okay? And this one has an estimated rate of 26.536, but 26. They aren't placing these by any thought. They're doing it with an algorithm, and you can see the line coming up and all the points. They have this being one of the Delta cases that's still there, but you can see in the recent time frame, they have had no sequenced Delta cases, and you can see the BA1 and the BA2 up here. They come back and pick up.
Got it. Just a quick one. Darren said, yeah, no answers. So I don't know, Darren, what are the questions? Rimas has one. My friend had to test to return to Canada. We were all shocked at the positive result. Okay, so you're talking about that person. Got it. Patty Zig says, my daughter and her husband were double vaxxed and got it. Their 2 kids were not vaxxed and had mild cases. So kids are a different game. I was double vaxxed and I got it. And I think then I got a re-exposure as well, although just for 1 day, but I still have the cough going, which I thought it was cats or it was allergies, but I still have the cough after the re-exposure. I believe
right.
it.
And I got it twice, and I was double vaccinated. And now I'm doing some math tutoring, and I'm in a middle school with a whole bunch of kids. So would be amazed if I wasn't continually exposed. But if we take a look at this genomic sequencing, you can see the rate is 26.5, and this is based on global subsampling. If they go and they take the GIAS sampling, we have the same curve, and now we have a 25.8, and you can see that some of the points are different. And so depending on which database you use, we're going to get some differences in the analysis that's going forward. All this stuff is brand new. Nobody knows what is the right thing or the most representative thing for it. Because you see out here, we have some Delta cases that are way out here. They're still occurring. Where if I go to the global subsampling, I don't have those cases. They're gone. But then I have this case right here of a Delta that was picked up in, where it's a location. I don't see the location. Okay, we have that point, and if I flip to the other next strain window, see that point is not here. And so trying to figure out what's really going on and where it's happening is sort of futile, because the virus is doing what the virus is doing around the world, and the question is, what is it that we can find? What is it that we can test? What is it that we know? And again, I'll put this here. You see the lines I have, and if we drop all the other points out, again, where does the line come down? Does it come down at this point, in which case it's moving up? The further back I move it, the flatter the line is going to be, and the fewer the rate of the mutations going forward. And I also just pulled this because it has the BA2 and then the BA1. You can see the share that they have around the world with these of what has been found. This is not the current rate. This is the total rate. So if BA1 is completely eliminated, but they have a whole bunch of historical tests, it's still going to show a fair amount of BA1. And as you can see around the world, we still have an awful lot of BA1 and an awful lot of BA2, but we're getting more BA2 going forward than we had before.
Got it. A few comments from the cool beans here.
Okay.
Number one, Susan says, I kept getting runny nose after feeling well and became tired quicker in cycles over and over. Insomnia didn't help that. So, Susan, I had one day of this runny nose in the morning when I got up. And during the middle of the day, I became tired, a little more than I would want to feel. And then by the evening, I had some cough. So everything else resolved, but I still have occasional cough. So that is my experience. I think that was a deep exposure.
Drbeen, were you taking any medication?
So I did not take anything. Nowadays, what I'm doing is I'm taking some anti-allergies and some anti-inflammatory and aspirin, but generally I didn't take anything. I was just fine by the evening.
Right, and you have allergies normally, and it's during the allergy season,
Correct.
So it
Correct.
makes it difficult to differentiate.
Correct. So
and
both
I think
things.
The Zoe app folks are saying that the runny nose is far and away the most prevalent symptom that people are finding.
Correct. And one more comment, SS says, if COVID becomes so common, will it be less deadly for some? It will be less deadly for some. And unfortunately, there are going to be some that are still at risk of dying from it. So it is still not a innocent virus living in us. It is still has a lethal potential, reduced though.
And we have, as you say, the mild deaths that people talk about, but we also have the long COVID, and I have not seen anything definitive talking about what the rate of the long COVID is with BA1 or BA2, but some information from the Office of National Statistics show that they are still getting cases of it, and it would be very interesting to see if we go back to the slide here of their rate. If the rate really is this high, and if long COVID is a function of how many cases they have, we're going to see a real spike in the UK of long COVID. And then the question is, if you get COVID once, is your chance of long COVID over? If you get it a second, third time, is it like 20% each time? Is it 20%, then 5, and then 10, or does it go up? I mean, I have seen no data talking about that. Have you seen anything?
Nothing other than studies. I think you're correct. We should start tracking long COVID as one part of this stats.
Yeah, and again, we can't do it because we're just reporting what others have done, and if no one has the study or the paper out, we can't do that.
Yeah. So, and one more comment from Lisa. Lisa says, I know many people reinfected, but knock on wood, my daughter and I have not had it at all. She's very high risk and 17, so we've been pretty locked down. Got it.
I was teaching some 8th graders some STEM stuff and talking about the immune system, and I told them this is not the way medicine does it, but the first level of defense is your head. Stay out of being exposed, put a mask on, wash your hands. You can make decisions that improve the immune defense that your body has. And it sounds like you're doing exactly that. So that seems like a wise thing.
Correct. And just a very quick comment from Peely J as well. YouTube suggesting BA2 even mild causes brain shrinkage. So that's the discussion I did a few weeks ago. It is specifically in those patients who developed anosmia and the olfactory system's malfunction then caused the associated brain function areas to start becoming atrophied as well.
Right, but I think as you were pointing out, that's not a representative sample. The people that had an anosmia have had an infection that is affecting the brain, that part that's in the nose. And so they're much more likely from a mechanism standpoint to have a brain reaction than someone who has the infection staying on the other side of the body-brain or blood-brain barrier, right?
Got it. Doug says no anosmia for me, thankfully. Yes, thankfully.
Good. So here we are with this one, and then this is the thing I had before, so we can see what the rate is and where it goes. This data can be interpreted many different ways, and these lines coming back are not based on any data at all. It's just basically curve fitting by an AI program, trying to fit it together to have some semblance of order for it. And it may be right, it may be wrong. And again, coming back so far, this is not the main point of where the software is. So I would suspect that this would be very questionable where the linkage is compared to some of the linkages that are a much shorter distance.
Got it. Rima has a question. So should we start wearing masks again if vaccinated and post-COVID, if otherwise healthy?
I think that's a personal decision. If you're comfortable wearing a mask, you certainly with the Omicron going around, you're more likely to get infected than you were when the Omicron was down. If you're in the UK and 1 in 19 people have COVID versus 1 in 100 before, you're more likely to be exposed. So if mask wearing is what you'd like to do, now would be a good time to put your mask on.
Got it. Thank you.
The next, this is showing the world right here. Let's see. No, come on. This is the one I want. See, we'll blow it up, and so you can see it's up, came back up, and now it's coming down again. And we have the Omicron running across the world, and the rate for the world is coming down. Is that reporting, like the UK? The US isn't doing as many testing, or is this a real decrease? Again, I don't know. All I know is that the rate, whatever it was coming up, now appears to be coming down. And unless there was a change in the reporting, then the coming down is real. And whether it's twice as many, 10 times as many cases, still, if the reporting is the same, a decrease or increase should follow what, in the direction that the report is showing.
Got it. There is a question from Lenny. How prevalent is brain shrinkage? Who would likely suffer? Is it related to severity? So Lenny, I actually talked about it last week or a week before that. The interesting thing is that YouTube immediately demonetized it, immediately. And the result is that once they demonetize something, they would not promote it because it won't earn them money. So that was their way of just suppressing it. So there was a video I did a couple of weeks before that, and that was about New York State and the Pfizer vaccine efficacy in children, and YouTube immediately demonetized that as well. So I have discussed in this video many of these questions. It's just interesting that YouTube would not let people watch that often. Sorry.
But I do think that it is good that YouTube, if they don't like it, chose to demonetize it rather than remove it. I mean, they certainly could have
removed it as well. So I think they decide how much angry they are. And based on that, they removed 54 of my videos. Some of newer videos are actually just demonetized.
Right, and so maybe they're becoming more or less malignant or less oppressive in what they're doing and allowing people who have the link or want to go see it to go find it. So,
yeah.
Now here I have some countries. We have the incident rate and the positivity over here. We have the incident rate and the positivity rate for several countries, okay? Got a fairly short time frame here. And so we can see South Korea is up here, and we see the cases coming down. And if I look for South Korea's, you can see their positivity rate had a little dip, but it is still coming up. So it would seem to tell me that this decrease that we're seeing in South Korea is not real. Because if it was real, we would see the positivity rate going down as well. So is this a reporting thing that they're overwhelmed and they did what they could to report it, and now the reporting system is overwhelmed and people are dropping reports, or they're not doing testing, or something else is happening? But I do think that South Korea cases should be following the same positivity, should have this little dip, and then it should keep going up. If you take a
It
look
seems like
here,
the cases is really not a great measure anymore until we want to understand the long COVID, because I believe that is related to cases. But cases are not really counted in some standard practice anymore.
right? And we always had a difference in regions and a difference in countries in reporting it. But I think now we have more of an issue, more of a problem. You can see this is Vietnam, and they've come up here, and then they just stopped reporting. And again, it may be that it isn't a malignant thing. It may be they're overwhelmed. Why would you report when your rate is that high? They're at over 80% of the tests they perform are positive. Why would you continue to sort them out? If you're going to give a test, assume they're positive. Don't do the test, just treat them. And the Netherlands, we have the rate well over 60%. We have Germany's rate coming up way over 50% and continuing to increase. And we see the German rate coming along here. Their incident rate seems to be fairly level or decreasing. Again, that doesn't seem consistent. So again, it may be that people are thinking, oh, it's just a cold, I'm not going to report, or whatever. But if we take a look, several of these countries, here we have, this one is the, which country is, this is Netherlands. And you can see the cases went up, came down, and then we have this dog leg. We have this leg that came off it. If we take a look at Hong Kong, up, down, and we have the same type of leg coming down off it. If we take a look at France, we have a more bell-shaped curve. Take a look at the United States, the UK, we don't have this dog leg coming down. And what does that mean? Are these reinfection cases that are occurring? I mean, I have no idea, but something's occurring. And again, if the government was reporting it, I would think we would tend to see this number come all the way down, okay? But we're not seeing that. And we have also Canada coming across here, and you see just a slight increase, but look at the positivity rate in Canada, kicking way up. They're at 20%. 1 out of 5 people sent in for testing. Now, is that a reflection that they're only testing people that are more likely to be ill? Again, that could be what's going on, and maybe their incident rate of that the positivity test is showing isn't really showing an increase. It's just showing that they're changed what their testing is. And we have France here, France positivity coming up, and France having their cases coming up. They seem to be in phase. So it appears that France, whatever they were reporting, however they were reporting, they're continuing to report the same way. And so the percentage increase in cases and positivity seems to be the same. And we have here South Korea. You can see it's coming down, and we're already seeing this sort of dog leg, but it's much higher here than it is was for Hong Kong, or here where it was for the Netherlands. And so I don't know what that means, but I think somebody's going to study this later on and come up with at least an explanation.
Got it.
Now, we had talked before the separation of the COVID linkages with the UK. And you can see here in Israel, we have these confirmed cases, ICU, patients in hospital get zeroed out, and at 100, we come up, they're all in phase. Up here, we get more in cases than what they had in the prior wave. This was the, I think this was the beta, and this is the delta. We have more cases, and then when it comes here, we have way more cases with the Omicron. And now we're getting something going on, because remember, these are time shifted already. So we should be seeing the patients, ICU, and confirmed deaths going up, and they aren't. They're staying down. First part of Omicron, they went up.
So can I say that this is, you're talking about, there is decoupling that is occurring?
Right. And it has just occurred at this point. The first part of the Omicron wave, they were still coupled together. We did have much higher infection rates than we had with the Delta and with the Wuhan or the Beta, whatever it was back here. But now, if this had gone up and we didn't have any decoupling, we would have the patients, the ICUs, and the deaths following up just like they did at the beginning of the Omicron wave. And you
Very
notice
interesting. So even in
Israel,
this previous Omicron wave, the number of cases were too high, and equally the ICUs and deaths, they went up as well, but not very high. And in this current phase, the cases are increasing, but the other numbers are not taking at all.
right? Because you can see if we look at the same height over here, you can see there are a very significant increase in all three of these, and right now they're all three low. We can argue maybe ICU's ticking up a little bit, but it's so close to zero. And I don't see the same type of increase. But certainly the patients and the confirmed deaths are not showing any response, and the cases are way up.
And I think there are many reasons. For example, unfortunately, those who were more vulnerable have already become a victim. Then those who may have been more vulnerable, they became vaccinated, then infected, and slowly the body is actually becoming better in handling it. So there may be more better management strategies.
Right. And I like to think the doctors have learned how to do something better and are treating their patients better. But we are having a tremendous decoupling. And so there's a lot less suffering for this last increase than there was in the first part of the Omicron. And if
And
you
of
can
course, I should
notice
say
right
that
about, go
the
ahead.
virus mutation itself is also contributing towards a better outcome.
And that can be because we talk about it as BA2 or BA1, but you saw from the next strain, there's literally hundreds of different strains that have been measured and thousands that are out there. So it is continuing to mutate. And perhaps what we talked about, the increased mutation rate, maybe it has become even more infectious and even less virulent and less deadly. Could be that, it could be treatment, it could be that the very at-risk people are no longer around, either because they've died or they got really scared and they're hunkering down or whatever. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and if you notice, the Israeli curve right about at this point has a little bit of a dog leg, not the same as the others, but the curve is not quite symmetrical. It kicks over just a little bit, as we saw the other ones much more pronounced.
Got it.
This is the United States. Looks like we're in phase. We had our hospital admissions much higher relative to, if you take a look here, this is at 300%. Israel was up at 800. So the line here is a little above 100. And you can see a little above 100 for Israel. But again, we had half or fewer cases than they did. So we have a much higher relative hospitalizations than Israel did. But again, all of ours are going down.
That's
And
correct.
our deaths are higher than our confirmed cases or patients in ICU, which hasn't occurred for anybody else. Why are more people dying in the US? Is that a reporting issue? Is that a treatment issue? I don't know.
Got it.
Looking at some of the other graphs, the same thing. Israel, now we have Israel again. I've got Germany. Look what's happening to German cases. Israel only peaked at
Very
800.
interesting.
Germany is higher than they were. And why
Yeah.
are we having these three steps?
Yeah. That's very interesting. So, of course, I'm sure that there are not keeps changing, and that is what is creating the step ladder here. Interesting is the numbers below, which are really not moving that way.
Yeah, they have decoupled as well. Just like Israel has started doing it here and like the UK did, there seems to be no correlation between these cases. And I mean, maybe it's come up a little bit, but nowhere near what has happened before. You can see up to this point, they were almost completely in phase.
So it is
Here
possible
we have go ahead.
if the trends continue this way, then it is possible that in a month one could declare that we're done.
Right. And if we expand this part of it, you can see this is the confirmed deaths. Their death rate dropped markedly here and stayed down. It came up more significantly here relative to the hospitalization and the patient and the deaths. Okay. Next, going to the Office of National Statistics for the UK. Here we have the rate, as was said before, Scotland is higher than everybody else. They've had more lockdowns longer, and they have higher percentage testing positive. England came down and went back up. Wales up, down, and back up. Scotland down, and way back up. And Northern Ireland stayed up and is just barely starting to come down. The decrease that we had in the other areas didn't seem to really occur in Northern Ireland. Maybe a little down, but the overall direction was a continued increase. And someone that lives there, maybe there's social effects that were going on or something else that was causing that.
Got it. And Gazar says that what we don't want is a SARS-CoV-3. Gazar, I think that the Omicron was so radically different from the previous variants in the behavior and the clinical outcomes that this could have been called as SARS-CoV-3, and the SARS-CoV-3 could have been the one that is just wrapping up and moving out of our lives the way it was deadly before.
I think that would be a proper medical decision, but the politicians aren't going to make a decision that they had a new pandemic on their shift.
Correct.
And here are the Office of National the Office of National Standards, their standard statistics. You can see the infections, they're showing them increase and coming back up. They're a little bit behind, so they're not showing the down trip, and then the really high rate that the Zoe app is showing. Hospital admissions are going up. Deaths increased a little, but nowhere near. You can see social distancing continuing to come down, only 28%, from about 90% to 28%. 99% of the adults have active antibodies, so they were probably, given the level that they're testing, it probably means that they're active, which means they were probably exposed in the last 3 months or so.
Very interesting. So 99% percentage testing positive. And US did a similar result as well. They just released, I believe, a study that showed 97%.
Right, and those are not all vaccinations. Some of them might be vaccinated, but I have to believe it's people that are getting exposed to it. And if you're being exposed to it, it's, for me, it would be silly for me if I'm getting exposed to keep my immune system active to take a vaccine and the side effects for a vaccine, because my immune system is going to be ramped up from the endemic exposure. So I think I would decide not to take the risk on getting a booster or going forward. And some people may not have a choice with their employment or for some other reason, but it would seem to me that looking at it medically, and certainly if I'm in England or if the US has a similar number, why get exposed through a mechanism that is causing some side effect, even if it was 1 in a million side effect? Why would you take it?
Correct.
And they're having 80% have gotten 3 vaccines in the UK. So they're not following what I would do. People are just following, getting vaccine doses, and then they're getting a 4th dose. And it's certainly, if you're a shareholder in some of the companies, that's a good thing to do. But and I also think, without knowing, but guessing, why do we not have an Omicron-specific vaccine? And my bet is they've tried it in the labs, and it doesn't give any greater protection. So they're not going to roll a new thing out. They have a limit of how many vaccines that they can have. They have more arms than vaccines around the world. And if we're going to slow down, stop your manufacturing, retool, and start up again, you're going to lose some vaccine cases, some vaccine doses. So it makes sense If the vaccine is essentially the same efficacy, to keep making the old COVID vaccine.
Got it.
Here's the Office of National Statistics, their mortality. They're showing this is based on, I didn't read how they came up with the area, the people in the most deprived economic area by zip code or postal code, and the least deprived. And then for males, they have the same thing. So they're showing a huge impact across their society based on the deprivation of the area in which they live.
Got it. And is that the body's condition or access to medication or
This, I think, is
hygiene?
economic deprived. So it's the people who live in an area that is more economically developed or a richer area versus a poorer area, I believe.
Got it.
And certainly this appears, looking at it, to be very statistically significant. And much more so with...
Just a quick comment. My apologies. YT comment says, Dr. Bean, did you hear from others also that long COVID got improved after Omicron? Earlier, there were anecdotal mention about vaccines helping with long COVID, fatigue is lessened. Yes, so many folks have, again, no studies yet, but many folks have said that re-exposure has actually helped. But at the same time, some folks have said that this is actually, re-exposure was more severe. So I can't say one way or the other. I think everyone has a different behavior, just like some people even die with it and some don't even have symptoms.
Well, and Mobeen, isn't that true for all of the long COVID? You get some people that get treated with something and it cures them or helps them, and somebody else gets treated with the same thing and they say it doesn't help them or it hurts them.
Absolutely. So you are absolutely correct. For example, fluvoxamine in some cases exaggerates the situation and in other cases helps them a lot. So you are very correct.
So long COVID, it might, at the end, we might be viewed more as a syndrome or a collection of different diseases than being a single disease.
Absolutely. So that is very much in line with what Dr. Paul Bork was saying to me a couple of weeks ago, that it looks like we have multiple pathologies that cause these symptoms, and we need to figure out what those pathologies are so that the management can be correctly targeted.
Because, I mean, anytime you treat someone, you're going to have some side effect and harm for any intervention. And if you're not heading in the right direction, you have the harm and no benefit. And that would be a horrible thing to have done with someone's trying to treat someone and just causing harm and not doing any benefit. The other thing I wanted to point out here is for this mortality, the numbers here look like it's about the same percentage decrease, but as we've said through the whole pandemic, we have more men dying than women. And so we have the same thing occurring here. But it looks like the relative step down, and so the effect of the economic deprivation in the area they live is about the same for the men and the women, whatever is causing it. Maybe they don't seek medical aid, maybe they have more comorbidities, whatever it might be.
Got it.
Now, we've had some people interested in China, and I have, there it is. There's two articles or a couple articles from the Wall Street Journal, and it says that China is still trying the old techniques, but they've done some shift. And non-serious cases, they're not putting them in the hospital anymore. They're putting them into internment camps that are being set up in various areas. And some areas are having huge number of beds in these internment camps. And if someone tests positive, they're being rushed off because they're a risk to the society in the cases. And it appears, according to one article, that they're hiding cases and deaths, and the people that are being removed when they test positive, when they're in a care home, they're caring for people, and you take all the doctors and interns that get sick and you run them off and you put them in these internment camps, then the folks that they were caring for are not going to do as well as they would if they were continued to be cared for. And the people coming in, the replacements, they're not informed of what's going on, according to some of the stories. So it appears that they're just running more warm bodies in. They're not getting a good handoff. They don't know the patients that are there. They may not be as well trained as the folks that are in the internment camps, and they're sitting there until they are, until the medical folks are sure they're no longer infectious before they can come back. And so the deaths that they're talking about here may not be due to COVID directly, but it may be due to the fact that COVID is interfering with the care that they needed to continue.
Got it.
And they're isolating all cases, and it may be a result that if everyone gets isolated when you get sick and you think this is something you could get over with and might be able to hide it or not get caught up in going to an internment camp for a couple of weeks, maybe people will be less likely to report that they're sick.
Hmm.
And that is the end. That's the end of what I have here.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Very, very useful, valuable, and very interesting how the decoupling is just becoming more and more. So first, the rate of serious cases reduced, and now the actual linking is going away as well.
Right, but we're seeing it different in different countries, and I don't think it's just reporting. I don't think that Israel, the U.S., and the U.K. have that much different reporting that we would find decoupling in one and not the other because of reporting.
Yeah.
So either there's a treatment difference, there's a different strain, something is occurring.
Yeah.
And the decoupling is good. I wish we had that.
Yeah, absolutely. So with this, thank you very much for your time and insights and collecting all of this data together. As Cynthia is saying here, 143 likes. So guys, like more. So, and don't like twice, just one time liking is sufficient.
Just one time.
Yeah. And again, there are some links in the description if you would like to support this work. And I would see you on the other channel, and we will do some drawing together. So, Paul, once again, thank you very much.
You're quite welcome, Drbeen.